Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sulakshna, hosting this webinar on behalf of Wadhwani Foundation National Entrepreneurship Network. WFNEN is doing a phenomenal job in supporting startups, early stage and growth stage entrepreneurs and SMEs to grow their business. Entrepreneurs need mentors to scale their business to the next level, and WFNEN provides such mentoring and learning platform for free to those who come and register at wfnen.org. The mechanism is a very straightforward approach with goal-based, time-bound and structured mentoring. Enrich yourself connecting to 400 plus mentors from various fields of work and make a difference. As we begin, I am so pleased to be with you and to have the chance to introduce our speaker, Fani Patamata. Fani is an accomplished business leader and visionary entrepreneur with a passion for disruptive talent transformations. He is a CEO coach and a business mentor focused on people, growth and execution strategies. His focus sectors are food services, data science, and higher education. Currently, he is a strategic investor in a food service startup, Fresh for You. He is also on the advisory board of half a dozen startups and early stage companies. He has successfully built and exited many businesses. Most recently, he was the regional director at Randstad India and a former Adagood country business head. Initially in his career, marketed Wipro range of IT solutions for over 9 years across different geographies. An alumni of XLRI, where he pursued business management and holds PG diploma in computer applications from University of Hyderabad and is a graduate in civil engineering from Osmania University, College CBIT. After the presentation, we would have a discussion session for around 20 minutes where Funny would answer your questions. So please send me relevant questions over chat which would be answered at the end of the session. I would also love to hear your feedback on today's session. Your input and suggestions for future sessions are invaluable to me. So please leave your feedback on the poll and survey. Have a great session and check back the webinar link on the website to hear the recorded version for self-learning and access the presentation anytime. You can also connect with the speaker who is also a mentor on wfnen.org. Over to you, Funny. All the best.
Thank you, Sulakshana, and thank you, NEN, for this opportunity to share my thoughts on a very important topic.
16 hours.
I welcome all attendees at the outset to this webinar on startup culture and more importantly, building the right team culture and dynamics. So companies culture, there are many definitions to this term called culture, both cultures for races, cultures for countries, and culture for a group of people, and more importantly, companies and startups. In a company, I feel what is culture, I would say it is what people do when no one is watching them. That's something I define as what a company's culture should look like, and which means people are highly engaged and motivated, and they know the purpose of what they're doing, and hence they're performing their tasks, and that is how companies grow, progress, and become more valuable. So all of us know this. To build an enduring company from a startup to growth and next level, we must have a few important elements, and we need to really plan for a few things such as value props, people, team, an execution plan, vision to the market, and across all these events and activities that we are doing while building a enduring company, culture seems to be consistently being the underlined agenda of the company, because this is the most important element. It's the lifeline, if I may say, to run a successful company. Why is it important? Obviously, the many surveys that keeps telling us culture is a top 3 driver of companies' values, and more than 90% of people who participate in these popular surveys say culture is what makes a company attractive, or 60% of CEOs feel that culture is more important probably than the strategy and operating model itself. Uh, and Gallup, done a survey a long time back, and it felt worldwide only 13% of employees are engaged, which means 96% of people believe that culture change is needed in their organizations in some form or the other, and 51% probably thought they need a major culture overhaul. So what does it mean? Is it something that a few people sit and decide, and then they feel there's somebody who is responsible for this culture, and that somebody is the one who really takes all the heat and all the difficulties, the way that things can get done there? I don't know. I mean, culture is a very complex topic, and company culture is something people keep evolving as they grow and keep changing the way in which people's behaviors change for each and every situation going forward. So we will see some of those methods or trusted models which people have initially in probably 30 years before or 40 years back said that culture is driven by the leader, and the leader who is going to drive people to build the culture of the company. Is it process? Is it culture to do with today's situations or tomorrow's problems? How do we really drive culture? How do we build culture? There are multiple people who created models. One of those which, later part of time in these later years felt culture is more than what is visible, and it is much beyond the vision or the strategy or the GOSPA or any of these policies, procedures. So it is probably one which touches the unconscious behavior of the unconscious DNA of the person, and then what we really do there, which motivates people into becoming more productive, becoming more committed. Probably it also has to do with the morals and ethics of this individual, and then connecting that to their aspirations, to the real values of the company, to their appetite to change something. Because any amount of visible strategies we may define will change the moment that something else changes in the market, or something else changes in the situation, or something else happens. We may be saying something. It's like people keep saying, say, do, and do, say, do what you say and say what you do, etc. But fundamentally, is that how we behave? Is that how we really think, even when nobody is around? That's where I'm trying to connect this whole thing and say that. So is it about how the leader gives a feedback? Is it about how the leader tells the people to take risks, appetite to risk? Or is it about process? Is it about today's concerns? Is it about tomorrow's problems? So what is it that, we are driving? I think culture seems to be something much deeper than all of those. Culture of a company seems to be something a group of people will have to sit and identify and really do an introspection in terms of how we really achieve these things. Now that's a broad topic that culture of a company seems to look like. It's not so simple as it appears to for all of us to know. Now having said this, it also has its own variances from geography to geography, set of people and different countries, because things mean the same thing means different for different people. If they say the same thing, work ethic, for example, Indian employee is supposed to be the hardworking middle class, as they call them. like how Infosys always wanted to say, Infosys is a hardworking middle class company where people value work ethic, and which means in India is to work 10 hours or even more than that, right? Uh, People never seem to be going home. People never seem to be, or probably they'll be carrying work to their home. All sorts of things happen. That's very Indian of the way in which we look at what is a work ethic. In some other places, more in the Western world, they may be actually carrying their leisure, their sports, and their hobbies also to their workplace. I mean, you may have a gym right in the basement of where you work, or you may have so some Indians want to say building a strong culture is not about having bean bags and probably ping pong tables. It's much more than all of that. And when we say something or when we implement something, people should really be able to vibrate with, they need to resonate with what we expect them to resonate in the positive side, and then grow and improve on the productivity and the commitment to work. These are the fundamental requirements, isn't it? So having said that, there are multiple flavors to this. There are different ways in which we can engage and change these culture parameters. There are a few models which are more relevant to how it is probably working in the current world environment, which is more uncertain, more ambiguous. So one of those models, a more suitable model, is trying to simplify the over complex thing called culture. So all those old ways of the management practices which started with a strategy, an organization, process, you know, and the context in which people see these things are more, that are they feeling constrained? Are they really thinking that, somebody is trying to fix a lot of parameters around them and trying to put them in a box and ask them to perform? Or are these, plans, budgets, financial systems, the numbers, and then ask people to comply to them? So is it really giving them the freedom to work? And then the boss, is the boss, there only to control, or what else is the boss supposed to be doing? And lastly, everything related to the commercial aspects of the job seem to be more a contractual obligation. So, it's a contract. I paid you money, so you deliver work, and that's like work to rule. And then they said, if we have to shift this context into a better context where people feel like, the same values and the aggressive ambition that we have, and the purpose, if it is explained properly, if the employee understood the purpose in a better sense than looking at it as a strategy of the organization. Somebody has actually defined this goal for me, and what am I doing it? Then the change in behavior could be that they're willing to stretch and they want to do more. That's something that is found in multiple samples of companies when they started sharing more openly and transparently, and telling people about what is the real purpose of why they're doing what they're doing probably. And then imagine a boardroom where everybody seems to have an opinion. Each and every individual has their own reason to agree or not to agree on a particular task or on a particular system or on a particular process. But if in a room we discuss, agree or probably disagree, but once the meeting or once the discussion is over of seeing all the merits and demerits of a particular issue, everybody in the room commits because it's a collective decision. It is a group which decided something, and hence they're more disciplined. So it's almost like saying if the meeting starts at 9, it starts at 9, and everybody commits to it. They may agree to it or they may not agree to it. They may have their own set of disagreements, but people really commit to it, and that's how, instead of looking at it as a compliance requirement, if you look at it as a discipline that everybody committed to, then there's always a shift in the way people are more committed to what they're supposed to be doing. And then instead of defining the boundaries and giving the control aspects of management and boss, if boss is actually helping the person to connect to other departments or the other people in the company, and by putting both of them together and see that they eventually win in what they had committed, the employee might see, and the behavior with which the employee performs is that the boss is supportive and not that the boss is a control. And lastly, instead of creating a contract, build that trust, because two people engage with each other to work because they trust each other, and they trust, or the company, the employee trusts the company with having been in a safe environment to work and deliver the results. So this, in my mind, amongst many such models, I have shown you different models in the past. So between all these models, this seems to be a lot more simpler and a lot more easier. And this model was defined in those years Professor Sumantra Ghoshal in his path-breaking concept. He calls it a smell of the place. To just give you a background of what he means by this smell of the place definition, he says he's familiar with both these environments, the Calcutta in summertime or the vacation that he goes to visit his hometown, and the Fontainebleau there where he works in the university there, and in the spring, and the walk in the forest. So he tries to connect texts, and he says the same set of people, the same organizational rules might change with context from feeling that somebody is constrained or they're asked to comply, or they feel that they're controlled and they're obligated on a contract, relating to summer in Kolkata that he goes to, and then change it, a shift in the context, when he says a behavior of being stretched and happy to stretch, self-discipline because they're committed, and feeling that the organization is more supportive because they're helping the individual win, and feeling that safety of trust that is built by the company in the person's, in the employee's mind. He feels, it feels as though he's having a walk in this spring in near the Fontainebleau forest or somewhere, where whatever you do, an individual cannot walk normally in the spring in France. They will feel like jumping or jogging or singing, or they feel their mind is free, and that is exactly what is the context that one has to create as a smell of the place, which is a company, using which he says the person will be more productive and more committed and has more work ethic to deliver better results. I mean this, and obviously lot more motivated to work. And this is exactly kind of culture that we can create in a startup. Now, this is probably one of the solutions, but many of us may also think having running a startup or probably an early stage company. I've been through that phase myself for many times in different stages of my life. My first uh, company we started way back in '98. Two of us sharing the same table, because all we needed was a place to keep our laptops and start working. But yet, we didn't think, our company is too small to set culture. So we didn't really think about it. And each and every vendor that we identified, we went to the best company in that particular space. For example, when we wanted to buy some PCs, because the first four junior employees or the freshers that we added in after 4 months of time, we called the best companies in those years, Wipro, HCL, and all these sales executives. And we didn't say that see, it's only four of them coming, so let's not we may really cut corners and buy something more cheaper. But we went and have taken proposals or quotations from the top vendors in that space. When we wanted internet lines, we have negotiated and convinced our investor that we must have only a T1 line, which is MPLS in those days. We went and really spent a lot of money to get such a connection, because a dial-up 56 kbps, was never going to be sufficient, or probably we may outgrow, that bandwidth too soon. So such are those, excellence or a quality-oriented either services or products or people, or even when we went and brought in people, the first four people when I'm saying. So we were at that point of time running a HR back office for a company in Boston, so sitting in Hyderabad in India. But we went to TISS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, to interview their students. We conducted a campus interview at XLRA Jamshedpur. Though we are fairly unknown, we used to really talk very big about what we intend to do and what this business is going to really take us. And so we had a story. We used to tell those stories, and then go to the best places to fetch the top talent. We used to bring in the best vendors to get the best products or the best services that we had to buy. Even though they're 20% costlier, probably we negotiated harder with those top vendors than to really compromise on the quality of the product. So these are small things. I'm not saying these are too big, but for a small company, this is exactly culture. And work hard, spend your money wisely, because we are a hardworking middle class as a country. So we know the value of the money that we spend. But at the same time, work ethics, which is about showing the people how to stretch, uh, so all those factors, which Sumantra Ghoshal is mentioning here, few of them we can definitely go implement. And when I say implement, it is not for once, it is not for a lip service. It is what we do and what we continue to do, irrespective of what goes right or wrong. And if somebody is writing an email to customer, or somebody has to from the company represent and go and speak, the sufficient amount of preparation that we need them to do, the English, the language, and what values that they're bringing. So each and every point that we write and that we say, uh, even though we are small, we probably can take time to really put the right things in the place, so that the first set of people who join us, the first group of employees that we bring in, when they see that we value these things, that starts becoming, some of those, elements of culture that we're slowly implementing in the company, and the next level will keep taking it ahead, and we will not allow them to really miss that. It's not about being a stickler, but at the same time, being right about doing, first time right, or the quality and the excellence. And because excellence is a pursuit, we need to continue to pursue the excellence. So multiple such things, those are the ones which will actually set the standards for culture from the beginning of time, which will continue to exist in a company, and which will continue to be the way in which companies are recognized. Because I'll take a couple of Indian names. For example, when we say Tata, it's trust, and people trust the brand. Whatever there may be one or two products that are not so good, which they probably would have delivered, but the overall context of a reference to Tata is about trust. And similarly, Infosys will have its own cultural parameters or recognizable elements of culture that we really which comes to our mind. These are the brands, the big ones I'm talking about. And certain of those hirings, when they go wrong, it's easy for us to notice that there's been a cultural misfit, and people will understand that this is an aberration. And such are those examples which will take us to a long journey of building a company of respect and credibility in the market. So this is something that we can avoid. The other myth is culture seems to be more sounding HR. So it is a HR person, or somebody else who will probably define culture for me, and all I have to do is as a founder or an owner of a company, to just go and ensure that the people comply to it. I mean, this is exactly the opposite of what we want to do, right? It is not compliance to a excellence or a process parameter, but it is more of what we repeatedly do and what we do very well, and what we ask and most of our people to do at the same with the same excellence. That's something. Sometimes the stories may be repeating, the stories that we keep narrating, the narratives may change, but the stories seem to be similar. But that's it. I mean, that's what is culture. Because when people talk about a cultural thing in India, for example, somebody talks about Ram, the Ram from the Puranas. The stories repeat, and people say the same thing. The narratives may change, but Ram is the same person who is always respected his elders, and probably run the country well, and it's called Ram Raj, etc., etc., etc. So as the story unfolds, we all keep saying the same story multiple times. We don't get bored. It's the same thing. But that's how culture, when a founder or a owner or a CEO of the company is talking about his or her own company culture. And it's not for two people or three people to discuss, decide, and maybe it's not about, like I said, beanbags and ping pong tables, or probably what we have printed on the notepads, like Scott Adams says here. So how do I identify these elements? Obviously these are all adjectives, really sounding nice, but how do I really go and identify what motivates my people? Why will they be productive? How can they be committed? How do I ensure that their morale is high? What's the work ethic? And how do I ensure that they commit when they commit, and they do when they commit? So one of those good methodologies which Simon Sinek had written, start with a why. This is one of those golden circle, the example of which I've depicted here. seems to be the right way to identify, or when I go and sit down and do. So I keep doing this once in a year now. Earlier we used to, in the past I used to do it multiple times. I used to call it Chintan Bhaitek, but that is what I do every year, of sitting and identifying the purpose, or the why. Why do I do what I do, or why should I do what I do, and why should people in my company do what they do? So do they believe the same thing that I believe? So if you go through any of these videos of Simon Sinek, or any of his books, if you read, he speaks and talks about examples from Apple and Steve Jobs and certain other examples that he makes a reference to. But fundamental remains to be the same. It is about the purpose. And once we know the purpose, if we get the clarity of the purpose, and then it's easy to communicate the how of what they're supposed to do, and you know so the clarity of purpose of why we do what we do, if that is defined, then the discipline of how we do that work, and what we, and consistency in what we deliver, we can definitely define these things and keep communicating to people that we hire or people we bring into our system, and continuously ensure that this translates and travels down, so that the entire group of people, or the company, or people around us, the customers, so all of them mostly know what is happening with this company and why this company is in existence, and they believe in what we believe. So that brings me probably to one of the last few ones, where I take this lesson from the Simon Sinek's way of identifying the why, and then narrate it to the people that I'm hiring. So this is how I enable culture fitment in each and every hire that I make to my company, because people must know why they're working here, and what is the purpose of why we're hiring them, to be able to do their job better. Because if you just hire them for the job role fitment, or for the money, I mean, they will just come and do a job. And when they do a job, they will normally, any individual has this usual way of achieving 80% of the KRAs, and they'll continue to execute, or achieve their job results at 80%. And imagine a collective of say 100 people achieving only 80% of their results. And if that means I have to really think 120% of my business goals and then distribute them amongst all these people, that is dangerous, and that is exactly where the sales of the companies lose their momentum in the market. But in case if people really understand and believe in what the company believes in, or what the founder believes in, they actually put in extra efforts, they stretch, and like what Simon Sinek says, if you hire people who believe in what you believe, they'll work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And that's when we will be able to produce those results that we committed to our customers. And in this whole context, I also added the same why, which will work, or when I'm hiring, probably not just teams, but also when we are hiring co-founders, when we are probably engaging with investors, or probably even when we go and talk to companies for potential mergers or acquisitions. Uh, this culture fitment, the so-called why culture fitment is important, is because once we know this DNA, and once we are convinced about why we are doing what we are doing, we'll be able to communicate to all of them, including the persons we hire or people we bring in leadership or co-founders or even the companies that we go want to merge and acquire in the future. So some examples of who's probably done these things correctly, but each of those companies I'm probably going to take only one example. I'm almost coming to the last 5 minutes of the presentation. So here is one company, a very popular customer services company, and when they hire new employees, after the first week of training, which they provide for each and every new employee, if the person is not up to the job and the individual feels, the job is not fit for them, the company wishes to pay them $2,000 to quit and go and find another job. So now we understand why it is very important to hire the right culture fit. If they're not a culture fit, then it is time to really part, but part happily. Finally, it's a brand that makes millions and billions, that we aspire to make. But hiring a culture fit and staying with the culture fit is extremely important. So the company says their number one focus is the culture, and they live with it, and they live for it, and they stand by it. And there's another example I found, which is quite interesting, other than the Zappos example, which is talking about culture. Is this company Aetna, and they pay their employees because they slept well. I mean, this is really path-breaking when, and for Indians especially, when we feel, to be closer to the boss or probably to please the boss, we probably need to work harder, and which means that I'm actually there when the boss is around, and I leave only after the boss leaves. That's a standard Indian way of Indian employees' way of thinking, and as a company's focus, they want their employees to sleep well so that they're able to concentrate better, they're more creative, their insights are better, they recognize patterns much better than the ones who are sleep deprived. They can learn better, decide better, the reactions and emotions are under control, and probably they'll also be able to develop meaningful and trusted relationships if only and only if the person had slept better. So they give their employees some kind of a device, and using which they track their employees hours that they're sleeping, and employee can earn bonus for that. I mean, these are the two examples where the culture aspect and the employees' well-being is taken to a next level of driving productivity, morale, and probably motivate the employee much better than how rest of the companies do. And there are many such examples. I mean, these are just two of those examples that I felt I wanted to bring to our attention this time. But there are many such examples where companies have thought differently because they have identified their DNA and the purpose of their business much better than trying to stay at the superficial level of thinking culture. So the norms, the processes, the controls, the various strategies and different business plans and everything else is superficial. But what doesn't change and what is very simple actually drives the complexity of the culture of company. And that's the DNA of a company. And the way in which we identify this DNA probably of our own company, what works for us and what will work for the business and the customer that we plan to deliver these top results, is probably identifying and going down and asking those why questions not once but probably 5 times. That's what they say, ask why 5 times, we'll get probably the right and the best reason for each and every parameter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Funny. It was really wonderful the way you covered each and every aspect of having the right team, having the right culture in this session. And I'm sure our audience have benefited from whatever you have said. So for everyone, we are now at the end of the session wherein we would start our interactive session with Funny soon. So guys who have raised your hands, I'm just going to open your line and connect you directly to Funny. You can also send me questions over chat, which will be answered via Funny. So I would encourage you to participate and ask more and more questions to Funny to clear your doubts. So I am opening the line for Samarth Agarwal. Samarth, may you please ask your question? Hello, Samarth. Samarth Agarwal, may you please ask your question? Okay, I'm not hearing anything from Samarth. Next question comes from Savita Hosamane. Savita, may you please ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Savita here. I have a question. See, I have an employee who is on a part-time basis. He is a telemarketing executive for me. And though I have set the role clarity for him, somehow I feel that sometimes he misses out on few things. And since we don't work face to face every day, it becomes difficult for me to track him. So can you give me a few insights on how I can help him to move to the next level in his performance?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's always a dilemma while we are managing people, more so on a time sharing basis who are at a remote location. So I understand, the person maybe either feeling good about what the person is already delivering, or probably the person is not really interested to say whether so the quality of delivery or not, and probably is the person really aware of how it is impacting or why the person has to do these things right. Going by the same slides that I have gone through so far, because fundamentally a person may not perform either because it's a willingness issue or it's a skill level issue. Right? It's only will or skill. Skill is always trainable. So when the person is making mistakes repeatedly, it amounts to saying that there's probably lack of skill. Or if we already know that the person has skill, because these errors are not repeating, not the same error is repeating all the time, but it's probably lack of attention or lack of it's not taking enough care. Then probably it is a willingness level issue, and for which dialogue will help, which means in large companies we refer them to HR, but in typically startup environment, the founder or the person who is reviewing this individual must wear a hat of a HR person. Try and identify why the person is not motivated, and then we'll get down to this DNA and clarity of purpose, etc., etc. Then we'll be able to solve that. I hope it answers.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I didn't know whether it is a skill or a will. and then we'll get to know the right thing to do.
His willingness is there. He's always willing to do. But like as you said, probably skill is not there because he is also a fresher to this environment. And it's just a month since I hired him, so I have not been taking him too much on a rougher side. So I'm just letting him commit all the mistakes. Probably I'll check out on his skill, and then it will be easy for me.
Then the hat you must wear is a trainer's hat and train the person.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fanny, for answering that. The next question is from Avinash Jain. So let me see if I can open his line. So Avinash has a question. In startups, founders are more attached emotionally and somewhere it affects professionally. How to balance it?
The voice is mumbled a little.
Okay. So Avinash had a
Can you
question.
repeat it once?
Yeah, Avinash had a question. In startups, founders are more attached emotionally and somewhere it affects professionally. How to balance it?
Founders are more attached emotionally than being attached professionally, you're saying?
Yeah. Founders are more attached emotionally and somewhere it affects professionally.
Somewhere it affects the professional aspect.
Yes, yeah.
No, that's important. Emotions always are critical because that is what flows from the founder or the person who is asking somebody to deliver to the task. But at the same time, we also must give the freedom for the other person to be able to perform. So, which means we need to really, if we feel that we have hired the person, the correct person. I'm assuming this is in the context of leading a person, managing a person.
Avinash, you can please ask. Yeah, Avinash, if you can please ask Sunny what are the kind of doubts you have.
So is this being emotionally attached in the context of leading a person or managing a individual, or is it to the whole business and the work? Avinash?
Avinash.
So let me answer both.
Okay.
If it is to an individual, I think, if we are confident about who we hired as a employee or the individual who is working with us, then I think we need to allow them to perform and allow them to make mistakes. And then, once they come back, we correct them. I mean, that's the way we can reduce, our balance being too emotionally attached with each and every process of what the individual is doing, not to teach them by steps, but by giving them a longer direction and then allowing them to perform. But if it is to the business itself, to the business idea itself, I'm spending more time and maybe, take a holiday or a break in between, and that's it. But one needs to really be full time when we have taken the risk to do something on our own and been in that. When there is a dream, there's a dream, and dreams are also at some level connect to the emotions.
Next question is from S. Rupshri. So Rupshri, you can ask your question. Hello. Rupshi's question was, ours is a startup company. We have an employee whose attitude is very rigid. He's a good person but acts cranky. How to handle this person? Work-wise, he is good.
So work-wise, we're only, it's a contract. But I think the person, we must engage with the individual at more DNA level also to be able to drive the same objectives. So I hope the session, the slides themselves would have answered some part of that question, because the more we make it a contractual thing, of what say Sumantra Ghoshal said. I'm just trying to go back to that slide. So is the context around which we are managing this individual is on the left side of this slide or on the right side of the slide? If it is the left side of the slide, it is probably us, and then we have to take efforts to shift it to the right hand side of that slide, because the individual is good, the performance is good, he or she knows what to do, but the person is slightly crankier. So is the person feeling constrained, or is it that the person is feeling that they're controlled, or is it just a contractual obligation is how the person is feeling, versus are we really able to support and ensure that the person is stretched enough, or is there the trust that is formed? So we need to identify those and shift the context and see it work on the ground. The solution is to probably explain less and allow them to do more. I mean that's the only way in which there's a visual markup of having achieved or not achieved. That's it.
There's
I think.
Yeah, that answers it well. There's one question from Praveen Hedge. Praveen, may you please ask your question?
My question is about how do we set up the startup culture for the startup which is too young, less than 6 months or 7 months old.
So the
Can you
culture
hear
is
me?
what we. Yes, I am. So your name you said?
Praveen.
Praveen.
So Praveen, the culture, is it an individual run entity right now, or there are people in it?
Currently we are a team of 11 members.
So you're good. So 11 of you, it's always the right time, or probably it's important to set the right culture in the team, which is related to what the customer wanted, and because as and I'm assuming Praveen, you are the founder.
No, I am an employee here.
Okay.
I am working as a business analyst in this company. We are
Okay.
into growth services. We offer marketing strategies and the stuffs. So the thing is, we have different team within us, like a media team, technical team, and consulting team. So each one of us have a different set of works to do, and everybody has a different way of looking at the things. So in order to build the startup culture and to make sure that we all collectively achieve the given objective, sometimes it is difficult. So how do we set up a common culture? That's the challenge.
So Praveen, what you just narrated to me means that we're currently working, or probably we have areas of work in the norms and processes stage of this particular slide, if you are able to see it.
Yeah.
Right. So it is more at behaviors level, and behaviors keep changing, and with context they keep altering. So people tend to change too soon, unless at a company level we go down and identify why we are doing this business, and what is our DNA, what is the real right thing that can't change this company. So what are we, and why we are doing what we're doing is something as an identification. I think it's an activity the founders and the leadership team must sit through, analyze, and bring it down to those simple 3, 4, or 5 elements. And then if the rest of the company or the 11 of you are convinced about what this is, then the rest of the norms and process can always be redrafted if it is required, or the ownership and commitment comes to it within no time.
Okay.
Right? Because if process and norms are being discussed at a very external level, the core DNA and values, people are probably not completely identifying with it. Right? So that's something that is an exercise to be done, and it has to be communicated not once, twice, but almost on a regular, continuous, homogeneous background basis. Actually,
Okay.
right? Once we identify them,
Sure. Sure.
and there are consultants who will be able to support and help such activities.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, they are trying their best now.
Right.
The only thing is that I think it's too early for us also to understand whether the strategies that we are deployed works, or it is still like we need to do some refinements or not.
Strategy is still vision. It is also one of the outer layers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? If you see this diagram, it is much more fundamental than that. Culture and
Yeah.
DNA is
Yeah.
much more fundamental than that.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
over
Thank you.
chat, Praveen had asked how to deal with startup founders who are not bothered about setting up a corporate culture.
See, the startup founder ideally is supposed to be working with the customer and solving a customer problem, and that's the reason why the startup is founded originally. If I may, say this, and once I'm identifying customer and I know which problem of the customer am I solving through my service or my product, and if the founder is convinced and the founder is able to communicate this to the rest of the people in the company, then everybody will know about it. And everyone will work to that common objective and goals and the programs or the plans and strategies, etc. And then the behaviors will be to comply to all those aspects. But if the fundamental customer problem that we are solving is still not known to many people in the company, or probably we have not explained it sufficiently well, then is when the individual is not fully convinced or probably confused in terms of what is the real problem that they're actually solving. So that is that why, which the purpose of the company, which has to be communicated first. It is the same thing that we communicate to our customers, our people, our co-founders, our investors, our teams, our I don't know, everybody, our family, to anyone that we meet, even if we wake up the founder or the people in the middle of the night, they should be able to articulate that 11 seconds elevator pitch, not the financials, but the purpose of why they have started the company and which customer problem are they solving very effectively. And that is what builds the rest of the culture and the strategic intent and vision and behaviors and everything else that they will follow.
There's one question from Purvi Sharma. Purvi, I've opened your line. Yeah. Hello, Purvi. Purvi, can you hear us? Purvi, we can't hear you clearly. The question that came from Purvi was, I just moved in from Belgium to India and started working in Bangalore. I was expecting that I would get proper training for my job, but actually I'm expected to work on my own. How should I tackle this?
So in Purvi's situation, it is having an open chat and a dialogue with the person who is direct manager or probably the founder of the company or both together uh, in the context of knowing the responsibility areas very clearly and what's expected, etc. So any employee's primary responsibility when they join a new job or a new company is to set the goals, objectives, strategies, plans, and actions, the GOSPA as I call them, at the very beginning of the tenure or whenever it is the right time to set it. Because signing a KRA, signing a KPI sheet is the responsibility of the individual and not the organization. So having said, pulling the supervisor into reviewing this periodically is also the employee's own responsibility. And once we continue to do this repeatedly, everything else will fall in line in terms of what to do, how to do, because we need to access the boss's time to get our objectives signed up and the objectives performance reviewed, and that's it, and no other solution will work there.
There is a question from Gaurish. Gaurish, may you please ask your question?
Hi. Is there any link between organization culture and individual culture? Like something at individual level, we follow some kind of culture, and at organization level, there's different culture we follow. Okay. Is there any chance of conflicts which might arise because of this?
So if you remember
And
this, if you remember this slide, Gaurish,
yeah.
An impactful fitment of an employee to a company always happens if all those three fitment elements are evaluated correctly. The job and the role fitment, which is more to do with the work and experience and education probably, and the boss fitment, which is more to do with individual's temperament, etc. And then the company fit, which is the cultural fitment. And only if all these three dimensions of job, boss, company fitment is ensured and done correctly, is when the employee is happy and motivated and truly happy and motivated in the job. Okay. If there is any element of doubt or any question which is arising in the minds of individuals on both sides, it's better to go back to the drawing board and verify the assessment.
Okay.
It is important. I think, not all people culturally fit all companies, and all companies can hire everybody in the market, irrespective of whether, even if they made a job fitment or some boss fitment.
Okay.
Example, I will take a very public example of two public companies. A Wipro employee, I mean, I work there, so I know, can never fit a HCL, and HCL employee can never fit a Wipro, culturally. Both may be the same IT solutions or programmers or developers or whatever. Wipro is a highly process-driven company and a very people-oriented company, while HCL is a very customer-oriented company, which is which is driven by entrepreneurial
It's
culture.
17 hours.
So they're two different worlds, and trying to fit people from one another, sometimes, I mean, most of the times it will not work.
Okay.
Which we have seen with Vishal Sikka, Infosys, or we have seen with many such examples in the past, in the recent past. And it also worked if, you look at Vivek Paul fitting into Wipro from GE and Wipro. So similar cultures, right?
Okay. Okay.
So there will always be such differences.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
We are almost nearing the end of the session. If there are any questions, please send it across to me over chat. Sunny has more or less covered a lot and has really given great insights. So if anyone has any more questions for Fanny, please flag it off right away, because we would be closing the session soon.
So I'm also leaving my hashtag and details if any one of us wants to stay connected for future.
Savita wanted to pause in people's slide. She wanted to see the people's slide. Savita, this presentation would also be available on the website wfnen.org. So you may please come back tomorrow to get the PPT and also to view the recording, which you can use at your disposal.
I don't know which slide you said, people slide.
People slide.
I'm assuming that is a culture and job fitment slide, company fit. Is it the one?
Savita, can you just people collaboration she mentions?
The graph one, where and not where, the third second slide. I think it was the second slide. Yeah, this slide. This.
This
Not
one?
this. The next one. The next one. The next one. Yeah.
Okay.
This. Yeah, this. I just wanted a picture of this. This is very informative.
So Deal and Kennedy and William Schneider are the two people you'll be able to find in the public domain.
Okay. This will help.
So in 1982 and 1998, both of them have invented these models to define culture.
And it's relevant even today also?
To a large extent, but like we have seen certain models from Sumantra Ghoshal or Simon Sinek are trying to define something which is more relevant to the current way of working, as well as the startups, and lastly the volatile and ambiguous market conditions that are prevalent now. Because in those years in 82 or probably in 98, the market conditions were a lot more different.
Correct.
From what we see today. So and some of these flavors also will change. For example, with India, an Indian context is different from a global context.
Correct.
So if you see this, the way we do our rituals, our customs, and our language, and many things, differ from how we do it in India versus what happens in the global situation, in the global context. So, I mean, like I said, we don't have a authority to question. Right from beginning, Indian culture taught us not to question authority.
Correct.
And not to question elders. Period. And that's not so in probably a few other cultures.
Correct.
Now, an Indian boss sometimes, if not adequately exposed to the global context, may take an offense to people questioning authority or the logic, and which may be rightful and easy and okay in few other places. And even now in startups or probably even in MNC culture companies in India, people still sir their boss, and they're not on first name basis, right? And that's something that is Indian, very Indian, because we have a colonial rule which actually have given us some culture. So likewise, so the context keeps changing, and therefore, what changes on the superficial levels of what we see and what we can influence and what is visible is different from what is the core and what is the real unconscious reasons, and that's where we need to define our culture elements and have to keep it very simple. And typically in India, everybody seems to have an opinion on everything. And we keep giving our own opinions even without asked. If there are three people sitting and in conversation, a fourth person who is overhearing may also come and give an opinion on probably that movie or something else in a private conversation. And that's not so in some other countries, and it's seen as inappropriate. So likewise, so there are many things that changes at a superficial level in the context, but what remains is the core objective of the company and why we are doing the business and which customer problem are we solving, and is everybody in the company aware of this? That's what is important. So, Lakshana?
Yeah, so I have not received any more question from the audience. If you want to connect with Funny, he's also a mentor at wfnen.org. Plus, he has given his email ID and phone number over the presentation, so he can be reached out anytime for everyone. And so I'm concluding this webinar on building the right team culture and dynamics in startups. And it was a pleasure having the webinar session with Funny. I truly appreciate the way you have covered each and every topic in detail and also cleared our doubts on the same. I'd like to express my appreciation to the participants on behalf of WFNEN for your dedicated participation on the webinar. I'm sure you had a great session. Check back the webinar link on the website to hear the recorded version for self-learning and access the presentation anytime. You can also connect with the speaker, and we would be having another webinar series shortly, and we would like to bring to you another enriching experience. Wish you success in your endeavor. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone, and Sulakshana
Yes, thank
for
you.
the session.
Thank you so much, Fanny.
Bye-bye. Take care.